Welcome to the Game of Life podcast, where we bring you inspiring softball stories, insightful tips from coaches and players, and explore how the game transcends its boundaries to become a metaphor for life. Whether you're a sports enthusiast, a casual fan, or someone just looking for inspiration, you're in for a treat. We'll unravel the tales that go beyond the scoreboard. Discover how perseverance and hard work on the field translates into resilience in your daily challenges. Learn about teamwork, leadership, and the unwavering spirit that fuels success, not just in sports, but in the game of life.
Hey everyone, it's Allie here. I know I'm starting today and not my dad, so you might be surprised by my voice, but good to be with you guys again. We got a fun topic tonight and we're gonna twist it up and I'm gonna bring up the topic and I'm gonna have my dad start us off. So, all right, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, so all right, let's say I am a young softball player, a high school softball player. It can be any stage in my journey, and I am just looking for information. I want to either get better at my swing, I want to know how to get recruited, I want advice because I'm not playing or I'm not starting. I feel like today there's so much information overload with TikTok and the internet and lessons and private coaches. Where do I get information? How do I weed out information and know who to listen to?
Wow, that's awesome. And the answer is you get information everywhere, right? That's the problem. Uh, Sometimes clips are hard to understand in context. I think real life in-person advice is the best, but that can be overwhelming. You could be at a practice and each coach is telling you something different at a station, right? When it comes to recruiting, you might be getting advice from somebody whose daughter or as a player was more talented than you, or wasn't as talented, or went to different showcases, or was a three-sport athlete. So you can't compare that because it's your own journey. So to answer all of that before we break it down, is I think it's important you learn how to ask questions. And I don't mean question everything where you're insubordinate and not listening and not having manners. I mean, if you don't understand what the person's saying or you need to know more about it, then you ask why, how, what do you mean by that? And I know, I just came from an open gym tonight, and there's a lot of young kids in our program excited to try to be part of it. And I don't know a lot of them, but I walk around all the stations and I'm like, oh, what are you working on? How come you're doing that? Have you ever thought of this? And then what do I mean by that? And it takes a while, but you want to see if anything's clicking in there, if they're just being robots. Because if you're a robot on recruiting, if you're a robot on career advice, if you're a robot on being a better athlete, softball player, whatever sport in general, you're not going to reach your full potential because everybody's journey is different. So I hope I didn't rant too much, and I hope that's kind of what you were looking for starters.
Yeah, I love that you took it that direction because that's kind of where my head goes too. It always amazes me how little players or athletes ask questions when they're confused. And I'll give an example. I give hitting fielding lessons, I coach team practice, all that stuff. And there's I've been a few times where my girls go to high school season and they come back to me and they're like, Coach Allie, like you would not believe this drill my coach had us doing. Like I don't even get it. And they'd tell me what it is, and I'm like, well, I can tell you why they had you do that. And I explain it to them in the words I would have used, and they're like, oh, well, that makes sense. And I'm like, you could have asked them what the purpose was. I think kids sometimes they get one coach, and then if somebody says it any differently, nope, that's not right. Well, my coach would have said this. My hitting coach says this, or my travel coach says that. Maybe just ask what the purpose is, to your point, and learn how to ask questions. Just because someone's saying something differently doesn't mean that it's wrong. And another thing I tell my girls pretty much when they start hitting with me is if you learn something from another person, that's good. Like, I'm not going to be territorial over your learning. That would just be selfish of me. So when you go to other coaches or you go to high school season or, you go play in showcases or learn from college coaches, I want you to learn from them. So I think that's just kind of something that can be a little misconstrued sometimes is, yes, I'm your hitting coach, but also you can learn from anybody that you want. I just want to help, expedite that process, if that makes sense.
Yes, and I like that, but I'll take it a step further. What if you ask that type of question. And then the coach or instructor jumps at you and is rude back to you and cuts you off and says, because, like, then what do you do?
Yeah, that's fair. I think there's two approaches. I think, well, first of all, if you have a coach like that, I'm sorry, because that's just
Yes.
not fun. So I think there's two approaches. One, at that point, if you already asked, you just kind of bite your tongue and you go from there. Or number two, you can say, I think it's a lot about your delivery, right? If you asked me that question and I'm like, well, my hitting coach says this, and that's why, like, they're probably gonna get defensive because they think you're saying that they're wrong. If you say, hey, like other coaches I've had explain to me that it's really important to load this way, so I'm just wondering what the purpose of this drill was and maybe how it ties into that. That's totally different approach than the other one I just did. So I think there's kind of two ways if you have a coach that wants to come at you like that, or the other thing is when are you asking it and who's the audience? Are you choosing to ask them in front of the entire team when they just did the drill, or are you choosing to ask them one-on-one during a water break when you can go up to them in a little more relaxed manner that's kind of less accusatory?
Well, and I was just going to bring up time, place, manner. You might not do it in between innings of a game,
Right.
and question, we're talking about advice to make you better. We're not talking about game time management or something like that. That would be a whole nother conversation. Uh, but it's even been as simple to me if someone's not picking up myself as third base coach as they round second, I'll pull them aside later and be like, why do you think I want you to look at me before you get to second? And then they know the answer, right? And now they explain it. And I'm like, well, that's a good idea, right? And of course they're going to say, yeah. And then now it's on them. If they do it again, it's nobody's fault. Like
Hmm.
you know, asking questions puts accountability on either the person trying to get better, or if you're asking questions of the instructor, it's putting accountability on them to actually explain what they're trying to do to you. Because a lot of times people just give you advice, but they don't tell you how to do it.
Yeah. And I think too, one thing I wanted to go into is we talk about, where do you get your information from? I think a lot of times when people go to hitting instructors or they go to practice, they just expect their coach to make them better, right? They expect, oh, well, if I just listen to them, I'm going to get better. But it's a two-way street. You don't get better unless you ask questions and unless you're challenging yourself. Because guess what? By you asking me questions, I'm learning more about what you're thinking, and then I can help you better because I know what you're thinking. So, my point of that is, sometimes girls will come in or, I'm sure you've had experiences where you coach girls and they're like, well, I've tried this for a week and it's not getting any better. Okay, well, how much time are you putting into it outside of practice? Talk me through it. What do you feel comfortable with? What are you uncomfortable with? So I think it's just important to remember that coaches are there to provide you tools and check-ins, but it's also on you to actually progress yourself and put in the reps and put in the critical thinking that it takes to kind of move through those situations. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. And as a coach, I don't always wait for kids to ask questions because that's part of leadership and developing young minds, right?
Hmm.
Like tonight at Open Gym, we never really use softballs to field inside. It's always tennis balls with no gloves, tennis balls with no gloves. Then we do wall juggling and agility and sprinting and footwork with tennis balls. And the kids get laughing at some of the crazy drills I come up with. So tonight I'm like, do you know why I'm doing this? And the young ones just sit there. And of course, it's a chance for my upperclassmen to be leaders, right? They're like, no, it's not because he's crazy. It's because we're learning agility and we're challenging ourselves with ball and no glove, you know? And when the season comes, it makes it seem easy when you have this big basket on your hand.
Hmm.
So I ask, and then I give people a chance to lead instead of me being the only authoritarian voice. That's ridiculous because a good culture is going to have several people at any given moment in time in your program helping other people and giving advice. So that's like next level. It doesn't have to come from one person.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I think we talk about all the time how sports are a metaphor for life. Think about if you were at work and someone told you to go do something and you didn't know how to do it and you just said, okay, they're gonna know that you don't know how to do it. So you ask why, right? Or you ask, hey, what do you mean by that? Or hey, why do we do it this way? That happens at work all the time. You're getting trained, why do we do it this way? But for some reason, I feel like as athletes, we don't like to ask that question, and I'm not really sure why, but it blows my mind, especially in a game like softball with hitting. Hitting is about buying into the process, buying into what you're doing. If you don't feel confident in what you're working to get better at, you're probably going to end up reverting back to something that you used to do because it's comfortable. So for me, understanding the why behind the movements that you're doing is so important because that's what makes you stick to them even through failure, right? If you know that turning your barrel behind the ball is going to make you 10 times the hitter, you're okay to fail through it for 6 games if you know it's going to make you better. But if you're not sure, you just say, coach told me to do it. When you start to fail through it, you're just going to revert back to pushing your hands to the ball, as an example. It's just you revert back to what you're comfortable with because you don't understand the why.
And again, timing is everything. One on one, it's questions all the time. Group lessons, you don't start questioning someone's authority. But at the same time, the instructor should say, any questions, any questions, give you that time for feedback. Because if it's just one way, you're not gonna get through it. That's not how learning takes place. Just like in a classroom, a teacher that just gives notes all the time and there's no dialogue between the students, nobody knows what's being learned, if anything. You have to
Right.
have conversation. That's
And
the
one thing
biggest part of advice.
And one thing I started doing, I feel like it wasn't even intentional when I started coaching, but now I do it on purpose. Whether I'm doing lessons, team practice, whatever, if I explain something new at the end, I go, does that make sense? And if it's not a yes, it's a no to me. Like if they don't verbally say yes, I'm like, well, somebody's confused because they would have said yes. And it's so funny because I can tell in lessons, does that make sense? They're like, I'm like, okay, nope, I gotta explain it again because it's not a yes. Or they're like, yeah, that makes sense. I definitely see what you're saying about, and then they start explaining it back to me. So I think I didn't do it on purpose at the beginning, but now I've noticed that I do it a lot because, again, the absence of a yes is a no,
I
and
like that.
in that sense.
I also like I started doing it because of you. When you ask for feedback, if nobody talks, us coaches like to just start talking. And you'll just sit there and go, okay, I'll wait.
Hmm.
And that awkward silence pumps in, and somebody will say something eventually.
Yeah. Yeah, you can tell it's on the tip of their tongue sometimes. But another thing I wanted to ask you, so obviously social media, huge, right? I could go on TikTok. A lot of my For You page is just softball videos, given that, I post too. But if you're a young softball player out there, you want to learn more about your swing, and you just go on TikTok and start watching videos, how do you figure out what's right for you and what's not?
Well, I mean, that's fantastic. I mean, I played college golf and a little bit after that, and I watched a lot of golf swings. We didn't have YouTube and TikTok. I watched it by watching golf on TV, but I would be at the range experimenting with all the swings I watched. So, in my opinion, I don't know if this is where you want me to go with it. I would be looking at all those videos and I would be trying that stuff. You know,
Mhm.
it could be, I could have no bat. I could be at home air swinging, or
Yeah,
whatever. And, uh, I mean, it's super hard because you could get so caught up in that you never stick to one thing.
that's the problem. Yeah.
Yeah. But
I,
it's the right track. But you just have to worry that you're not, oh, the next video, oh, the next shiny object, the next shiny object, the next shiny object. Hopefully you pick a track and you work to tweak that.
But to what we were talking about earlier, that's why you have to understand the one that you pick, because if not,
Yes.
you're just going to keep moving from thing to thing. But yeah, it's definitely hard. And I think one piece of advice I would give too is you can watch a video and take one piece from it. You don't have to take the entire thing. You could say, oh, this video is really about your lower half, but the way she just loaded, that's really interesting. I'm going to try that. It doesn't have to be, oh my gosh, this person is now like the only person I'm ever going to listen to about hitting. And anytime I scroll to somebody else, it's just nope, blockers on because I want to know what that coach says and they're the only one I'm going to listen to. I think sometimes that's where people can get a little tied up. So I think just keep your mind open as you're scrolling. And to your point, try things out. I mean, we used to do that when I was hitting with you and we had, BP sessions and whatnot. Hey, try this, try that. Does that feel weird? Yep, little too weird, or just weird enough where I think it could work. So I think if you don't try, you don't know. And one thing I always go back to is if you watch college softball or even if you watch basketball in the NBA, not everyone's shot looks the same. Why do you think that is? Because different things worked for them along their journey. And another one I use in Major League Baseball, you have hitters who start with these crazy loads. They didn't just do that to do it. They were probably working through something, and that's the way that they overcame it. So to me, when I see people with different mechanics, I see different things that they've overcome, not just, oh, I just chose to do it like this. You know what I mean?
Well, it's super valuable as you progress in any sport, but we'll stick with softball here. I mean, a lot of us dads were fortunate enough to be really big part of our daughter's life and development in softball. Well, there came a time where you played for school coaches, and I didn't coach school ball when you were there. Then there came a time where you go to college and they wouldn't let me in the practice facility when I drove up there.
Bummer. No. We're
But,
joking, everybody. We're
but
joking.
now whether they know more than me or not, they do, like those level people. But the neatest thing that made me a better coach and that made you a better player as you progressed, we did what we did. But when you went and had another coach, first thing I would do when you came back is tell me what you're working on.
Hmm.
And then I would learn and adjust. And then you would say why you're working on it. And I'm like, huh. And at that point, I'm not going to challenge it because that's your coach. But you helped me understand, you bought in, and then I learned, and now I have a bigger database of things to help people with. And I think you can't have an ego involved if you want to grow and get better. And to give advice, you have to be confident, but you can't let it be the only advice you think people deserve. And then to take in advice, you can't think it's the only advice you deserve to have. There's other avenues out there. And it's a never ending process of tweaking and working on it and filtering what you want. And I think the sooner people learn to do that without just going to the next shiny object, but understanding it all, the easier it is to grow.
Yeah, and I think you're probably one of the very few dads out there that had that mindset. Because I remember when I came home from school, you're like, what are you doing? Explain it to me." And the reason I like that is because I truly feel that if you know something really well, you should be able to explain it. And teaching other people also helps you get better. And I mean, I joked with my college coaches now. I'm like, my swing might be better today than it was in college because all I do after work every day is go talk to people about how to swing. So it's just it amazes me how being vocal and talking about your swing will also help you get better at it. And again, we're using softball. This goes for anything in life. I mean, the more you talk about something, the more knowledgeable you're going to get at it. So that's why even, at our travel practices, we have older girls go with younger girls all the time. And yes, it's for the younger girls, but it's also for the older ones to be able to vocalize what's going on in their head.
Well, I want to get back to how it's communication and conversation because when you want to help another human being, you get excited and you want to provide feedback constantly. But sometimes when somebody's working on something, if you want them to fully get it, you can't be commenting every pitch or every swing or every ball that's fielded. You have to let it go. And I think if you don't know that as an athlete, now some like that. Some like every third. Some want to just talk about it later, like in a recap. But overcoaching can be real. And when it comes to advice and when it comes to educating somebody and helping them, you have to have conversations and you have to know the player. Player has to know the coach, coach has to know the player, and you have to have this healthy dialogue constantly. And it may be different for everybody. And I think that gets lost in it all. Just because I'm commenting every single time someone gets a rep in, that doesn't mean I'm a good coach.
Right. Right. And
Might be
I
the
think
opposite
honestly
depending on
it
the player.
makes hitters anxious. And I think you have to be careful not to overcoach yourself too. I mean, I used to do this to myself sometimes, or now I see players do it where I'm like, okay, we're gonna start front toss, we're gonna do front toss for the next 10 minutes. What are you working on? I'm like, tell me one thing. And they tell me the one thing, and let's just say they're working on getting their hip turned all the way through. Okay. So they're getting their hip turned all the way through. I tell them, I don't care what your outcome is, you're getting that hip turned all the way through. That's the only thing I'm looking at. So they start hitting, they're like, oh, my back knee drive, I didn't load right, my timing's off. I'm like, okay, but you turned your back hip right. So do you want to focus on something else now? Or what are we focused on? Because you are moving the goalpost with every single swing. So obviously you're gonna fail. So pick one thing, and it gets so lost. And again, I used to do it too, and I'm sure that's why you're laughing, but it's so easy to keep moving that goalpost. But if we don't give ourselves room to fail in practice, we're never gonna be like satisfied with the performance of what we're doing.
Well, and T-work can be critical to focus on all those things one at a time because you're keeping the ball stationary, right?
Hmm.
Like I always joke, might be helping somebody in the cage and they're rolling over some of them, hitting hard ground balls. And I'm like, do you realize we're focused on it now? But if you do that in a game and it goes between the 5, 6 hole, I'm not going to ask what you did wrong there. I'm just going to say congratulations. Or
Hmm.
you rope one right at somebody, I'm going to say great hit, even though you don't think it was. Like you did it
Hmm.
right. There's times to be super critical and super hypersensitive to what you're doing. But I don't think it's really ever when you're hitting a ball moving at you, you pick one or two things and focus on it. If you want to
Yeah.
pick on a bunch of things, you do that off a tee or you do that with a drill or something specific.
And if you feel like you have a coach who every swing is telling you something different, I guarantee you, I'm going to say 99% of coaches, because I'm sure there's the 1% out there. Let's pretend, Dad, you're my coach right now, and I go up to you, I'm like, hey, I'm really having a problem with rolling over. So these next swings, all I'm going to focus on is my extension. Like I really just need to focus on that for my next 20 swings. So if other things look out of whack, I'm just focused on my extension right now. I guarantee you they'd be like, okay, awesome. So again, being able to communicate, coaches can't read your mind, and I feel like that's something I understand now that I'm a coach, ironically enough, but we can't read your mind. So if you want to do that, and I have, girls I hit with now, they're like, Coach Allie, I'd give them a drill. They're like, can I just do the first couple slow now? And I'm like, yes, I finally feel like I'm making progress because they want to break it down and they ask me, hey, I'm just gonna do one slow. Or we start going fast and it's not working. They're like, Coach Allie, can I go back to like going slow for a minute? I'm like, yes, yes, please go back to going slow. And I'm getting fired up, but it's just little stuff like that. Being able to communicate those things is gonna make you a much better hitter.
That's awesome. I think this was a great combo. I think in summary, tell me what I left out. When it comes to advice, eh, ask questions,
Hmm.
make sure you understand the timing of when you're doing it, not necessarily there's a time and place to be doing that. And then continually have a conversation because it's as important to understand as it is to explain it.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. And I think if you're someone out there right now who has coaches who you walk into practice and you're just like, I don't even know what they're saying, I don't know what's going on, that's as much on you as it is on them. So I think just take accountability for that, know when the right time to ask questions is, and be very careful in the way that you approach them. But I guarantee you, again, 99% of coaches are going to encourage you to ask questions. And if they don't, then maybe that's something to reconsider too about the environment you want to be in. But that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, softball and the game of life is hard enough. Try to use the people that are helping you to the best of their abilities, and you can only do that when you converse.
Yeah. Yeah. And the last thing I'll say, and then we'll leave it too, is think about something that you're really good at in your life, whatever it is. If someone came and asked you for advice on it, you'd be thrilled to help them. So I think remember that about your coaches when you go to ask them questions. I get fired up when girls come and talk to me about hitting because I love it. So I think just think about that one thing in your life you're really good at and how excited you would be if someone came up to you and said, hey, I'm really interested in learning more about that. You could give that to someone just by asking a question. So just keep that in mind.
Awesome, Allie. Thank you.
All right. See ya.
Bye.